What is going on? It's Tim from Arc Tactical. Just finished watching the Strickland fight and excited to kind of share some insights on that and just to talk about some recent stuff that's been going on in the corrections world. What I'll say just right out of the gate, we have a lot of cool stuff going on. In fact, we have a project going on this week. I'm really excited to share, and probably next week we'll be able to talk a little bit more about it. But really excited. It involves going to California, so that should be fun. Wanted to share some of our upcoming classes. We do have a class later on in the month in Iowa. It's our dynamic cell extraction instructor course. This will be the third time that we've actually been to Iowa, and it's been an overwhelming success. A lot of officers are digging what we're doing there and find it incredibly applicable. We also have a uh, Michigan Creating Change course, and this class is put on by Josh Ryle. It is his baby, and really, it's designed to change the mindset, not just of those who are joining corrections, but also the ones that have been in the game for quite some time. Obviously, we see a bunch of different things in the job, and it can kind of get us jaded a little bit. Maybe it makes us not want to go to work sometimes, right? So, this is a course that will really shift the mindset, provide a little bit more purpose, provide a little motivation to keep putting those boots on every day. And that's going to be June 15th. And then after that, we got some cool stuff in Nevada, another dynamic cell extraction instructor course. The Nevada DOC is helping us out with that. Really excited to work with them to host that class. And then a huge get that we've been working on for many, many years, and that is Maricopa County Jail. It's one of those um, bucket list agencies that we're excited to serve. 2026 has been one of those years that allowed us to do that. And then in August, we have another bucket list agency that is the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department in Ohio. So that is going to be some of our upcoming classes. Of course, you can see all of those upcoming classes on our website, arctac.net, arctac.net, and register for the class, guys. It'll be a life changer for you, not just tactically because our systems are fantastic. They work seamlessly and in conjunction with a lot of stuff you're already doing, but the community, the insight from our experts that are teaching these classes, it'll change your perspective, make you proud once again to be a corrections officer. So really want you guys to be a part of that. We do have some other stuff going on too. We are working on our in-service training programs, not just here in Washington State, though it's pretty prevalent there, but also in Idaho and Tennessee. If you're an agency that does not train regularly, that's a problem, right? What we're finding more and more is that agencies are not putting their dollars and or time into a solid, defendable training program. And when I have the opportunity to do expert witness cases, that's some of the stuff I look at is how were the officers involved trained, and do we have documentation that backs that up? And do we have a defensible learning goals or performance objectives that led to um, a successful outcome in potential situations, right? So that's kind of our heart with that. Here in Washington State, we've been able to work with 19 different agencies to develop their performance track each year on how we can get their officers to really level up their performance and their skills and capability. And that has been a huge success. We love partnering with our agencies here in Washington State, Idaho, Tennessee, and we're building that out in North Carolina and some other areas too. So if you're an agency that is struggling to get a training program put together, if you're struggling to get the most up to date training, up to date tactics, call us. We got your back. If nothing else, we'll help advise on how to move forward and some of the key things that we've learned along the way. So that is a project that we're working on as well. With that being said, guys, I wanted to talk about some topical stuff. We've had a couple of things here in the Pacific Northwest go down, not just for corrections, but also the security side of things too, which Arc Tactical is involved in as well. I just kind of want to share some ideas. So the first thing that we're going to look at is a case out of Idaho. And I don't know all the details. So just be aware of that. I try to do as much research as I can. I don't always get it right, but I do have some insider knowledge for some people, and just wanted to share some insights on this case. So the headline here is Idaho Correctional Officer sues Boise police officer, city, and county over 2024 hospital shooting. So just Cliff Notes version. And I'm again, if you have more insider info than I do, and I'm getting something wrong, feel free to blast me. But the highlights that I have gleaned from this is we had Department of Corrections of Idaho at a hospital guarding a very violent gang member, I think white supremacist gang. And throughout that process, the hospital kind of got taken under siege. One of the other gang members had a rifle, kind of stormed the hospital. I think there was like an active shooter type situation going on with the idea that they were going to try to help the inmate escape. Now, obviously, transports are some of the most dangerous things that we do. Anytime we're taking a violent individual or potentially violent individual outside of a confined space, whether it be the jail or even a courtroom to some extent, right? Because we have access to other people there. It's just dangerous, right? We lose control of a lot of the variables there. And so um, when we teach our transport course, those are some of the things we really, really look at is what are the increased risks? What are the things that we have to look at? And this truly was the worst case scenario here. So they not only had a very violent individual, um, they not only had a very violent individual that had ties to other violent individuals that had access to weapons. Um, and when they went and had this altercation with this person that was trying to facilitate the escape, naturally they called 911, got other officers on board. Apparently, it was the Boise Police Department and Ada County sheriffs that responded. So I'll just kind of read off of this, and I don't know what kind of citing we need, but I can tell you that this article came from KTVB 7 News. Kind of gives a really good breakdown of it, but it says here that Officer Wayne Anderson shot the corrections officer in the face and was acting with excessive force. It also asserts the city is liable for those actions and negligent in their training of officers, and that county is also liable for law enforcement conduct. Another thing that we look at when we're doing expert witness stuff is truly there's two main things, right? It's failure to supervise and failure to train. A side one is wrongful termination, which is becoming more and more prevalent. So admin, if you guys think that something looks bad, really make sure before you let go of somebody, right? That always comes back to bite you. But when we're looking at failing to train, I know these agencies. I've done some work with them through different things, and they have a pretty solid training program. Their facility looks great. The instructors are knowledgeable, but what ends up happening is with the individual officer, if that individual officer does not get the reps that they need, specifically in this case, decision making, right? How do I do this under stress? How do I um, analyze a situation? How do I take in all of the information that I have stimulus with, right? And then how do I make a correct decision out of that? Unless you're putting that officer through a bunch of stress and getting those reps in, getting that mindset in, these things happen. And it's just really unfortunate. Clearly, the officer involved probably is kicking himself, and much worse, probably just heartbroken that this happened. Um, Nobody did this on purpose. It was a dangerous situation that was truly caused by the inmate and the offender that was trying to break him out. But with that said, there's things that we can look at, right? Um, Article goes on, according to court documents obtained by KTVB filed in late March, Idaho DOC officer was helping transport inmate Skylar Mead, a white supremacist member of the Aryan Knights gang, to the I'm going to butcher this, Alphonsus Regional Medical Center. The transport was an ambush by a gunman. And that was a guy named Nicholas Umphamanor, who shot two other correctional officers and helped Mead escape. So obviously, horrible situation, active shooter within a hospital. These guys don't care what they're aiming at, right? The officers obviously got attacked specifically, but if you're shooting in a hospital and one goes, south, that's the problem, right? So uh, the officer probably dragged his bleeding colleague into an emergency room, then returned to stand guard near the ER entrance while on the phone with his supervisors. Minutes later, a Boise police officer arrived at what the lawsuit describes as a quiet scene. So the escape probably had already happened. They're probably all trying to make sense of everything, doing a self-check, buddy check, that type of thing. The lawsuit alleged that despite dispatch warning that multiple officers were already there and that the gunman was outside of the hospital, Anderson reported that he saw movement and fired through two glass doors. The round struck Wilski, who's the officer, in the face, according to the complaint. Shrapnel reportedly embedded itself into Wilski's orbital socket, brow, and torso. This is unfortunate, obviously. Wilski was wearing his correctional uniform, a duty belt, and bright purple medical gloves. The lawsuit claimed Wilski was not pointing a weapon, threatening anyone, or behaving like an active shooter. At the time he was shot, Officer Wilski posed no threat to anyone. The complaint states the suit claimed Boise officer failure to announce their presence, failed to use a shared law enforcement identification code were designed to prevent friendly fire shootings, and failed to gather additional information before opening fire. Following administrative review, city officials and police found the shooting reasonable and justified within policy. This is a decision the law enforcement or the lawsuit alleged or argued amounts to official approval of unconstitutional force. And I'll just kind of end there because I have some thoughts on it. So set the scene, right? I get an active shooter report. Officer's been shot. I am coming in hot to try and save the day. And that stress level is way off the charts, right? Some of the things that we can do to augment that is schema training, right? We run our officers through scenario-based training. We run our officers through force-on-force training. For whatever reason, in firearms training, and I'm not saying that this is the case with these guys, but I have seen it around the country, firearms training does not focus on movement. It does not focus on force. A lot of firearms training puts you at a 25-yard line and makes you shoot a silhouette that isn't moving. You're not moving. You have two hands, the lights are on, and it's very unrealistic to what the true test is. And that true test is an active environment, multiple people running behind the target, in front of the target, in between you and the target, right? They're moving, you're moving. You may be taking rounds. It may be low light. You might be moving so fast that having two hands on the gun doesn't make sense. There's a lot of different things that could be going on here, and that stress level is skyrocketing. With all that being said, we are still required to identify our target, right? The 4 firearm safety rules are pretty clear, right? All guns are always loaded, and everybody has a different variation on this, obviously, but all guns are always loaded. You want to keep your finger off the trigger until you're on target and ready to shoot. Do not point your gun at anything you're not willing to destroy. And then obviously be mindful of your target and its surroundings. But 2 of those are pretty important. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're on target and ready to shoot. Well, if he's on target and he has identified the target and he notices that they're wearing a uniform, a vest, duty belt, and medical gloves, and he has no weapon, then we probably shouldn't be putting our finger on the trigger, right? And again, I don't want to kick this guy's shins. But the problem is that this could be anybody, right? This could be a kid trying to get out. It could be pregnant mom, granny, what we don't know. We can't just shoot. The other rule that I find is pretty important is don't point your gun at anything you're not willing to destroy. In this case, he clearly did not identify his target. He said, what did it say here? That he saw movement in the glass doors. Just because something moves doesn't mean we shoot it. It's not like duck hunt, right? We have to be very focused on how we approach active shooters and targets, because in these environments, it's not as clean cut as we have bad guy and we have good guy. We have a lot of different moving parts, and we absolutely have to identify what our target is and that it's still a threat. Consider this. We have an active shooter. Our officers that are already on scene handle the threat. They give up. They disarm the person, and now he gets shot. Right? That's a problem. That is unconstitutional use of force. So we have to be able to identify our threat, identify our target before we press the trigger. One of the things that we talk about in our transport course heavily is communication, and not everybody has the benefit of sharing the air. I know that when I was working um, in the county that I was working in, we shared the air pretty much with everybody. Any area that we were assigned to, any hospital that we're probably going to go to, if we had vehicle trouble, we could contact the neighboring agency and talk about, hey, look, we're having some problems. Can you come and back us? We can always talk to our dispatch and have our state patrol pop by. I've done that a couple of times. Like, hey, these guys are getting out of hand. I need to pull over. I don't want to be on I-5 pulling over and having a problem with these guys. Can I have some backup, right? And so being able to have that level of communication, or at least the access to that communication, is really critical. Even if you're out of town, right? What that may be is like, hey, I'm going to call 911 in the middle of this transport. I'm in the middle of nowhere, but I'm going to call 911, identify myself, tell them where I'm at. So I should know where I'm at if I'm paying attention to my mile markers, if I'm paying attention to their GPS. We didn't have the luxury of those when I was working. But being able to articulate where you are and have wherever the nearest agency is, at least stop by and stand by, right? So having that communication is absolute key. Sounds like in this scenario, the DOC did not front load the surrounding agencies, whether it be the sheriff's office or the Boise PD, that, hey, we're on scene. We're going to be on this transport. This is who we got. Maybe come by and say hi and stand by, be present, right? That can always help. I think sometimes with the police side of things, corrections is kind of a necessary evil, and they don't realize that the job we do is incredibly dangerous. And so being able to have that communication, put things into perspective for our patrol counterparts, like, hey, you are my backup. You are the closest thing to my backup, and if I'm at the hospital. Security guards are there. That's great. Most of the time they're not armed. Um, their level of training really differs between where they're going, or what kind of security agency they have. But having the ability to have a backup and communicate that you're there, and if things go south, do we have a plan for that? Here's another thing to consider. Should we be training with our patrol counterparts? Yeah, we should. If we have a problem, do I want to know how they're going to act? Do I want to know how they're going to make entry? Do I want to know how they're going to get to me if I'm in the middle of a shooting, right? So yeah, cross training is incredibly important. One of the cool things that we found is through our programs, oftentimes we'll have patrol officers sign up for our corrections training. Why? They want to know what we're doing. They want to know how they can integrate. A lot of cops do not like to go into jails, and that's fine. But you probably should check out how you could help, how you could find work if we had a problem there, right? So, really important stuff to consider. um, Ultimately, is there a failure to train? I don't know. I don't know. Is this officer just a victim of bad circumstances that led himself to get hurt? Yeah, it seems like there might be a little negligence there on his face, but the truth is that I don't think anybody meant to have this happen. It's just a bad situation involving some really, really evil people that were ultimately caught. By the way, they got him, so good on them. But really interesting story to find. Has a lot to do with failure to train stuff, failure to supervise as well. But another one of those high risk transports that the worst case scenario happened. And I think it's really kind of important to look at that. Another thing that has happened recently, and I bring it up because we've had kind of an interesting discussion on this. Um, One of the areas that Arc Tactical works in is the security world. And we've had contracts that run the gamut, right? We've had an airport security contract, we have church security contracts. Um, we've done stuff with the federal government, making assessments on their capabilities. Um, we've done all kinds of stuff. And one of the areas that we are growing in is our security work. Um, Most recently, I won't name the agency, but it's a organization in Seattle, in the heart of Seattle. They have a security team, and we had the opportunity to go and train with those guys. And I was actually astonished by some of the feedback that we got. They basically run their own little town inside of Seattle Police Department's jurisdiction, and because of the climate, because of the political climate, Seattle Police Department just isn't showing up. They'll call the security guys to go and handle most of the business there, and they hadn't been trained for a very long time. And my heart goes out to those guys because they're very much in the middle of kind of a unique situation, right? Legally, and at least in the state of Washington, they do not have arrest powers. Security officers do not have arrest powers. They can't take people into custody off of a probable cause or a warrant or anything like that. The only way that they can detain or take custody of somebody is if they can articulate that there is a violent threat or a threat to officers or others or security mean or even themselves, right? But we have to be able to articulate. And that's the case with anybody, just anybody walking down the road. If there's a violent threat, I have the ability to stop that threat, right? But these guys are being put in positions because they're wearing a uniform and they're often the first people that the shops in this area will call, and they show up. They're now the first line of defense without any legal powers to do so. It's really a challenging situation. And the cool thing that I like to see from this team was that they really have a heart to do what they do. They've made relationships with the shop owners. They've made relationships with some of the people that are suffering from addiction or homelessness. They know these folks, and so their heart is really there. It was really meaningful to see the impact that they have and what they want to do with it. But they are stuck in that situation. So I saw this come across. It was kind of an interesting thing. I thought I'd share just to give some ideas here on what security can and cannot do. Here's a headline on this one, and this is from Como News. Off-duty security guard found guilty in deadly 2024 shooting because teen outside or of teen outside Renton Big Five. Um, so basically what happened here is there's a couple of teenagers, maybe like two or three, I think, were going to a Big Five, and they had their BB guns because their BB guns were not working. And so they go into headed into a Big Five with their BB guns. And this off-duty security officer said, "Oh man, they're going in there with guns." And he actually shot him, right? Um, one died. I think another one got injured. Um, but just an awful situation because there's no hero cake in killing a kid when he had a BB gun if he's not being threatening or anything like that. Like, and I think some of the defense was, hey, look, this security guard that was off duty, by the way. Not that he would have any powers if he was on duty, but he was off duty, saw what he determined to be an immediate threat. And that immediate threat involved a firearm. And I understand that. I can see that. I think part of the issue that I'm hoping some lessons learned would be is, hey, if you're a kid or maybe you're a parent of a kid that's having an issue with your BB gun, don't just walk around with it. Like that's a bad idea. And not that the kid deserves to get shot, but that is a really dangerous thing to do, right? Um, but along the lines of identifying your threat, Uh, he saw a threat going in with what appeared to be a pistol, and he saw that there was going to be an immediate threat, and he shot him. There's a lot of controversy of did he give a warning? He's supposed to give a warning. Sometimes, yeah. Law enforcement, the phrase "when feasible," right? That's out there a lot. When feasible, when it's safe to do so, we should be given warnings, right? Hey, look, if you keep doing this, this is what's going to happen. We don't always have that. And I can tell you this: a lot of security teams aren't training that. There's a thought that we have to be um, having the element of surprise or something like that. Well, no. If you got somebody that has a gun and they're walking not towards you, but somewhere else, we can make an announcement. And then if they move, then we have an opportunity to defend ourselves that way. But, and these are obviously broad strokes, right? Just some theory that we train on. But if we can, when feasible, we got to have a warning. And that maybe could have solved a lot of these issues here. Um, looking at this case is really kind of interesting because I can see both sides of it, right? Hey, I have the heart to protect people. I'm in a security job. That's my job. That's my profession. I want to protect people and I see what could be an active threat. This is my time to step up and handle business. But you get so locked into what you think is happening, you're going to miss what is actually happening. It kind of sounds like that was here. So horrible, horrible situation. So I just kind of want to come back around and talk a little bit about identifying the threat and how we train to do that. One of the first things that I think is important so that you can really set up the best way to have a shooting platform, the best way you can call out to the person, all this is by finding cover, right? Cover is huge. Might have to make some movement, and not everything you think is cover, right? You need to have something that'll stop a bullet. That's what cover is, right? Um, there's always an argument of concealment versus cover. Yeah, you can hide behind a bush, but it's not going to stop a bullet, right? That's not cover, but it does give some level of tactical advantage. Um, but you need to find some level of cover. And maybe if we could call the person out, like, hey, man, drop the gun, I'm going to shoot, those types of things, that might have stopped that kid in his tracks, right? We don't know. We don't know, but it could have. Um, so I just think identifying the threat, knowing what you're really working with before you make assumptions is really important. Um, Using those tactics that you're trained on. And again, I think that's something that is often missed, particularly in this type of world, is the security world is we're not training a lot, right? You might go to the range and pop off some rounds every once in a while, but that's not the real test. The real test is when there's a scenario going down that I have to make a shoot, no shoot decision, where I have to be active, moving, when I have to have a weaker shooting platform, maybe a one handed platform, maybe an off handed platform, right? There's a lot of different variables that we might have to work with. And we typically don't train on it until a bad incident happened. We're like, oh, we didn't, that's a gap in our training. We should probably look at that. And then sometimes it doesn't even happen after that. So, um, one of the things that you'll find with Arc Tactical is that we do focus on those gaps in training. We identify the areas where maybe agencies haven't had time to shine the light. They Agencies have limited budgets, they have limited training time, training hours, and they have to hit the broad stroke issues. Sometimes it's marksmanship, you get a qualification done, you do some basic DT stuff, but you don't really put it into scenario based training that combines all of these things, right? Because that's what we traditionally do is we train in silos. We don't work in silos, but we sure train in silos, right? Your firearms instructors aren't your DT instructors. Your DT instructors aren't your taser instructors. My vision and what we do here at ARC, because everybody is cross-trained in everything. That way, if you have somebody that has a what if question, we can answer that. Um, so blessed to have the team that I have. We're a bunch of nerds that love this stuff, love the case law piece of it, love the legality piece of it, love the tactics piece of it, love the skill based stuff. And I'm just so honored to work with my guys that all have the same motivation here. So with that being said, I think a focus on training with our security teams. Again, we are building that out for our teams here um, locally in Washington. But if you're a security team and you're trying to figure out the best way to train your team, reach out to us, man. We got your back. We have some really good ideas and some really relevant concepts that I think sometimes get missed because you are in a unique situation. So just something to think about there. Um, the last thing I want to touch on is kind of really relevant and just happened is that Sean Strickland fight. You know, any UFC folks out there that enjoy watching, I'm a tertiary nerd on that stuff. I love watching it. I don't get too dialed into um, each fighter or any of the stats or anything like that, but I like the skill based stuff. And one thing that I really wanted to look at, if you look at the first round of the Strickland fight, he actually got dominated pretty good, right? His ground game is fine, but that's not his superpower. His superpower is finding that one hit, that one strike that's going to change the game. But in that first round, um, he just got dominated on the ground and got his back taken and just fought against the fence the entire time. But if you go back and watch, if you go back and watch his demeanor during that entire time, all you see is a calm tactician. He knows that he's not in the paramount position. He's not in the dominant spot, right? But he is slowly working out of it. He's defending. He is breathing. He is keeping calm because if you start to panic, you start to struggle and have those issues during that type of situation, you are for sure going to lose. And he ended up winning the title. So this fantastic um, display of that mindset of continue the fight. I'm not done for. I can take these tactical breaths. I can work through this situation. I think that's really important to point out in professional fights, but also in law enforcement, corrections, security. If we're fighting, going crazy doesn't help us, right? So being able to take that breath, lean into, hey, I'm in this situation. What's my way out? What's my escape avenue? What can I do? What do I need to guard? What do I need to defend? And it was just a great display of that. So I encourage you to watch the fight. Probably highlight reels coming out tomorrow. You have the opportunity to watch that. Encourage you to do that. Where there's always lessons learned, and I think that's really good to be a student of the game. Not just if you're an instructor, but also if you're in the field, right? Being able to learn from that stuff is really important. That's all I got, guys. Really happy to be back again doing this. This is always a lot of fun. One thing I'm going to ask is if you like this, tell somebody, copy, paste, share it on social media. We want to build our audience. And so please, please, please push it out there. If you like the content, if you have a suggestion, if you have something you want to hear about, launch that out there because we really want to build audience participation and give you guys a little bit more insight about what we're about as a company, what our philosophies are on training, and how maybe we can help better your capabilities, better your mindset to do the difficult job that most people don't have the capacity to do. Take a look at our website again, arctac.net, arctac.net for our upcoming trainings, some of the other programs we have going on there. Again, just thank you guys. Please be safe doing what you do.